Now, on Thursday, the African Union Advisory Board on Anti-Corruption will be visiting South Africa to assess South Africa's implementation of the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. The mandate of the board is to promote and encourage the adoption of measures and actions by state parties to prevent, detect, punish and eradicate corruption and related offences in Africa, as well as to monitor the application of those measures. So to further discuss this, I'm now joined by Sefako Seema from the African Union Advisory Board on Anti-Corruption. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I think a lot of people might not know about this advisory board, and perhaps we can just start by saying, what do you do?
Okay, thank you. The African Union Advisory Board on Corruption is an organ under the African Union. As you have already mentioned, its mandate mainly is to promote and ensure that member states implement the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. The convention, as you know, mainly it promotes good governance and best practices among African Union.
So the million-dollar question, of course, is when a country is delinquent and doesn't do and comply, what do you do?
Unlike other conventions, we are not, what do we do? We simply encourage and promote member states in seeing that they implement and the African Union. We don't have some powers, enforcement powers, no, we don't. But
so it's a nice to have, but actually, at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't want to improve, they just won't bother.
Unfortunately, you may say that, rightfully say that, but the reaction of African member states in implementing is quite alarming, and it's very good, and you will be surprised that much as we don't have such powers of punishment or anything penal, they are quite, we receive a number of requests from member states requesting that we should go and assess them and advise, and
Does it help a country when they're when you give them a stamp of approval, a seal of approval, saying that we've looked at your processes and as far as we're concerned, they're good, they're strong, they're compliant. When they start looking for funding in other parts of the world, does it help to have this kind of attribution?
Partly, yes, and it's the donors themselves, when they look at such reports and then we say South Africa has been, it's very much compliant in implementing the convention, and not only the issue of donor funding, also corruption, you will agree with me, it's a cancer that is hitting many countries, and it sees no borders, as you know. And as it sees no borders, we need to collaborate as states. A state that does not collaborate with others in the fight against corruption, it's bound to suffer economically, and the people, the human rights, you know them. So it's not only about the issue of donors and all those things. It's about the investigation and prosecution of cases.
How well is South Africa doing?
South Africa, I must say that we are happy now. We have had countries report annually for the past 2 years, since 2017 to date. South Africa has been submitting their reports. There are annual reports that we send to member states for signature, and the question is, what we are doing now is an on-site visit assessment. Countries annually fill in the questionnaires on the updates on their fight against corruption. So South Africa is quite impressive. 54
countries across the continent.
Yeah.
How many are state parties and are trying to comply?
Like I said, it's quite good. We have, I can tell you, it's 43 out of 55 or 55 states, and recently we just had 2 and later this year I'm sure we'll get another 2. So it's quite impressive.
All right. So 2018, a member of the African Union Advisory Board on Corruption, Daniel Batidam, resigned, saying that there was persistent corruption within this advisory board. That doesn't bode well.
It doesn't bode well, yes, you are right. But we have different perceptions, and perceptions are perceptions from individual members of the board. Whenever there's corruption, as you know, corruption is a crime. It has to be investigated and proven, as you know.
So you're saying his allegations are unfounded?
I cannot say they are unfounded, but as we speak now, his allegations, may his soul rest in peace, he passed on earlier this month. His allegations are at the AU headquarters, being investigated there.
All right, so look, I don't know which countries you've looked at that are state parties, but if there's one thing that we know is that corruption is a huge problem on the continent. It doesn't seem as if a lot is being done. So I need to understand and join the dots for me, connect this for me. How is it that I can travel not very far and feel and see corruption rampant, and yet we have these institutions in play doing good work, it seems, but it doesn't seem like it's changing on the ground.
Yes, the issue of the veracity of crime and corruption in any country, whether, like I said earlier, we talk perceptions, and as you know, this type of crimes, they are very technical in nature. That is why one of the things that we are doing is to connect the countries to make one common understanding on the fight against corruption in Africa. That has been proven to be one of the most important ways of fighting corruption in the continent. The collaboration that we are seeking, that we are enforcing, is quite helpful. It has boosted
So how does South Africa rate as doing well when we can't count the number of commissions of inquiry looking at corruption at various levels, going into the billions?
All I can say is South Africa is quite impressive. With merely the establishment of the commission, this commission, ongoing commission that you know, it's a very good signal for South Africa, and it's one of the things that we share with other member states. And look what South Africa is doing. They are not just keeping quiet, they're fighting it, establishing commissions, and that is a good signal for the fight against corruption.
All right, Sefako Seema, we'll chat again after you've done this round of observations, but thanks so much for sharing your thoughts about the work that you're doing and the situation on the ground across the continent. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, okay, that's the situation in terms of corruption and the AU looking at what's happening in South Africa this week.